Namaste, Om to everyone. It is just such a great honor to be with you, to be part of the JAGAT movement, and especially at this time where it's really about universal justice, justice for all humanity, justice for all life, all forms of life on our beautiful Jagat, our beautiful universe, just like the wonderful speakers of the last session and this whole day are emphasizing. So thank you so much to Rajagopal ji, to Jill ji for inviting me in. As they know, I am, like Raja ji, a justice activist. And for me, the passion for justice, I'm a South Indian like him from Tamil Nadu and growing up in different parts of India. I really felt passionately about the issues of injustice in India, every form of injustice. So let us start as all things must start, and as your purpose is throughout this weekend, in all of the work that JAGAT has done from its very beginning, from village to village, across miles and miles of our country, across miles and miles of many, many countries, linking all the continents. Let's start by lighting that lamp in each and every human soul, lighting that lamp, which is the flame for justice, which is the flame of peace, of hope, and above all of humanity that burns in all of us. As I began saying when we were doing the test, that I'm really honored to be part of this day, but of, more importantly, the JAGAT movement. And to contribute with this session. We were looking forward to welcoming the marchers here who had already begun their journey across the continents to come to Geneva. I'm based in France in a small village where Theatre of Transformation Academy and Home for Humanity is hosted. And we were hoping to see Rajaji and Jill and all the marchers here to receive them so they could rest their tired legs. But it's beautiful to connect with you and all your partners around the world, such noble pioneers of nonviolent leadership. So in this session, what I wanted to share through a few of the stories of the people, the nonviolent leaders who are working for peace and justice around the world, who have inspired me from all of these 30 plus years that I've worked on the theme of justice and peace. Just a few of their stories. So we're going to go on a global journey around the world. We do have a little globe to orient us. And just give you a little bit of an indication of what we're going to do in this session. So I'd always been passionate about justice because, you know, like Rajaji has shown you over all these years, we cannot live in a society and not be deeply affected by what happens to people around us. And every time I saw an act of inhumanity, whether perpetrated against me or against someone else, it broke my heart. What made us lose our humanity? And every time I experienced systemic injustice, whether of our religious institutions, the caste system, against untouchables, so-called untouchables, political injustices, economic injustices, I felt we created these systems. Can't we transform them and create better ones? So my urge for justice was never so much, yes, I must say I loved the idea of parading in a courtroom when I was a child, but I realized it isn't about retribution, about punishment. It's about transforming the person who dehumanizes himself or herself by committing, perpetrating an act, and by transforming the victimization, because it's the victim who is the leader, the hero, who can teach us so much about how to create a society of peace and justice. That's what's so powerful about the JAGAT movement, because everywhere what Rajaji has done is uplift, make every single villager, peasant, landless person in India and around the world realize you are our guides and teachers. You can show us the way forward because you have the experience of injustice. So you know what a system without injustice, a system of peace, true regenerative peace would be. So that brought me to my work on justice starting in 1989. But over the last 10 years, what I've developed is transformative justice. And just a few points which you will experience for yourselves as we go on this joint journey, this participatory journey, is few key points of what transformative justice means. First, I've just said it. The victim, so-called victim, is actually the leader. Not just the survivor, but the leader, who can show us through their experience, their visions, and their wisdom, the path forward. That's number one. Number two is it's not just the victims. Transformative justice has to include everyone in the society. If not, they will feel alienated. They will feel not part of it, and they won't be part of the regenerative peace we want to build. So even perpetrators or bystanders or beneficiaries or people who just don't realize what's happening because they haven't witnessed it or felt it. Three, it has to be integral. It cannot be just a political or legal process. It has to involve all the dimensions of life. By integral, what I mean is, yes, socioeconomic, political, and legal are the mechanisms, but they are based on layers of cultural injustice, layers of ecological injustice, and above all, spiritual injustice. It's the taking away of the dignity, humanity, and values of human beings that we need to restore so they can lead us, so they can shape the future with us and for us. And above all, it is reflexive. We can never change the world unless we start by changing ourselves. And that's a lifelong process, which we are all on together. And we, all of you, as non-violent leaders of tomorrow, a new generation, you are there to be on that journey of self-transformation and to support each other. Hey, guess what you forgot yesterday? Let's do this and ask each other forgiveness. Let's move on and learn from ourselves and from each other. So with this, I invite you to start this journey around the world, to countries which have experienced a lot of conflict, to meet people who have gone on this inner journey of transformation and thereby become paradigms of change in their societies. I'll just explain how I'm going to do it. We're going to go around 6 stories to cover all these dimensions of justice, of integral justice. In each one, as we finish the story, I'll play a musical instrument that corresponds to that theme, and I will say 2 questions related to the story. One for our inner reflection, for our inner journey of transformation in our inner home of our souls, and one for our work in the world to create, as nonviolent leaders, a world of regenerative peace, of absolute transformative justice. So we'll take a moment, a meditative moment, to just integrate that, and then we'll move on to the next story. What I would love to ask you is, we won't have much time today because we are just here for an hour together, for you to actually work on all these issues. But if I could request, perhaps if my colleague Mena is online, when I say the questions, if you could, to the best of your ability, type them in the chat box. And if everyone would reflect for a moment and put down some keywords in the chat. So this becomes an iterative process. We are all building up our shared experiences together, our insights, our experiences wherever we are in the world, whatever our justice issues are. And then in the end, I hope we will have some time for you to share that and for us to take this transformative justice journey to build nonviolent leadership, to build societies of regenerative peace together. So with that introduction, are we ready to go? Okay. So just to remind you, we'll be going on the journey of political justice, where we go to Fiji, then socioeconomic justice, which I do together with legal justice today, for which we go to Cambodia. Thereafter, we will go for cultural justice to Peru in South America. Then we will go for ecological justice to Syria, where conflict is still so devastating. Then we will go for epistemic justice, which I forgot to mention, the knowledge in justice, because knowledge is power. We will go to a refugee from Somalia, a young boy, and then we will conclude with spiritual, metaphysical justice in Palestine. Where better, but in the heart of the world, in the Holy Land. Thank you. My name is Ratu Vesikula. I was the strongest in my tribe. So when I was a young man, I was recruited into the British Army. Oh, they taught me a thing or two in all their dirty wars. Well, when I was 40, I took early retirement to come back home to Fiji to fulfill my promise to my father to lead our tribe. But when I came back, what I saw here in my country made me very angry. Those filthy immigrants, foreigners, they had come into the country while I was gone and they had taken over the whole show. My indigenous people, we had been reduced to being their servants. This was not good. So when the young people of my own tribe said, "Oh, Ratu, you have learned all the dirty tricks of the British. Will you not teach our young men how to be guerrilla fighters?" I said, "Yes, I will show them a dirty trick or two." I trained our young men, and our young men were sowing mayhem across our country while I was sitting back and watching the fun. But one day, there was a knock on my door. It was a man I had never seen before. He said to me, "Mr. Ratu Vesikula, could I have a dialogue with you?" Dialogue. I did not even know what that word meant. I do not know why I said yes. But I let him in, and we sat face to face, and we did this dialogue for a long time. He came back many times to dialogue with me. Each time after he left, I would keep on this dialogue with myself, with the inner demons inside me that had woken up, asking myself, what am I doing? Why? Who am I? What am I becoming? Until the day I knew what to do. I started in my own kitchen. I went up to my wife and I said to her, "My darling, will you forgive me?" She was so shocked, she dropped the dishes in her hands. We picked them up and I started again. "My dear wife, I have been a very bad husband all these years. I have been a bad role model for our children, always angry, always full of justice and vengeance. Can you forgive me?" The way she held me in her arms gave me the strength for what I had to do next. There was a national conference with all of the different members of our community, and there were leaders. When my turn came to speak, I stood before my people and said, "I, Ratu Vaisikula, ask you all for forgiveness. What I have done is wrong. Give me a chance to make amends and do good and bring peace to our country. To you, the people of my own community, I ask you to forgive me. I misled our youth. I dragged them down the path of revenge and violence. I was wrong. Give me a chance to work with our young men and women and to help them to shape a positive future for themselves and for all of us. To you, my brothers and sisters of the Indian community, I have done you much harm. I regret the harm I have done you. I regret all of the damage done to you by my young boys in the militia. I ask you with folded hands, forgive me. Forgive me. And if you find it in your heart to accept my apology, I ask you to shake my hand and let us work together to rebuild our one country together. The leader of the Indian community, I saw he was listening. But when I finished speaking, he got up and left the room. After many hours, he came back and he spoke to me. And he said, Ratu Vesikula, the very sound of your name made us tremble in our knees. We associated you with all that is evil in humanity. But I listened to you, and I know that you were sincere. So I thought about it, and I say yes. On behalf of our community, we accept your apology. Let us try. Let us shake hands, because our country needs it, and let us try to build it together. When we shook hands, it was like a ripple of an earthquake of peace across our country. Neighbors, friends jumped across walls of man-made hatred to shake hands, to hug, to say sorry, and to rebuild those broken bridges. It was only the beginning of a long journey, but we had begun, and we had begun together. That is how I, who could have become a warlord, unrepentant, became a peace senator, guiding the youth of our country towards a better future. Not only that, even now at my old age, I go from country to meet young men who are filled with hatred as I once was, to tell them no. Take the path of non-violence, of peace. If I can change, you can. We all can be the change. Thank you. Be the change. So, dear friends, participants, co-creators of justice and peace, non-violent leaders of the next generation, take Ratu's story into your own hearts. Hear the knock on your inner door and first reflect, what are the inner demons inside you? For each one of us has equally the seed of greatness and the potential seed of doing harm, even without meaning to. So what, if any, are the inner demons you might want to meet? What are some issues within yourselves you might want to face and overcome in order to become even stronger as non-violent leaders? Think of that for a moment. Write it down and perhaps share on the chat the intuition that comes to you. How can you face your inner demons every day in order to become a stronger leader? And second, in terms of our role in society, can you be that knock on the door for our current leaders, for our current perpetrators, helping them to face their inner demons, giving them the choice, transform, and we will support you. We will give you the space to transform and become contributors to our society of peace. But if you cannot transform, leave us, the new generation, to create a new society of love, of compassion, of justice. So go into yourselves and ask, in your role in society, can you be the knock on the door, the non-violent communicator, the facilitator for the transformation of today's leaders and the creators of tomorrow's peaceful leadership? Think for a moment. Jot down some points in the chat so we can share them, collect all your wisdom, and then we will move on to the next continent. just take another moment. It would be wonderful if all of you who are online with us do. This is a really interactive, participatory session. Normally, we would have been sitting in a beautiful little circle, all together in the same space, really sharing. So make the chat space your space where you express yourselves, where you inspire others with your experiences, and put down a few lines so we can share them with each other and be enriched by each other. And we move on to socioeconomic and legal justice. We address them together today. You will see why. Wonderful. I'm glad to see many of you contributing.
I am Sotevi Chan from Cambodia. I was only 5 years old when the genocide started in our country. My father was a professor in the university. They shot him in the back of the head. My mother was a school teacher. So they sent her, with us 5 children, to a labor camp. Though I was only 5, I had to work just the same as all the other children in the labor camp. My job, it is this. I must fill this big basket full of cow dung. Then I must walk and carry it to the field and put it in the field. One day I was doing this, walking barefoot because all of us were barefoot. But a thorn came in my foot. I slipped and I fell. And my basket broke and all the cow dung spread everywhere. Oh, I quickly looked around and I tried to collect the cow dung and to repair my basket, but a guard saw me. He pulled me by the hair. He dragged me to the center of the village camp. There, he made all the children, 350, to surround me. He took a whip and said, everyone must whip me because I am an enemy of the people for wasting the resources of the country. They all started whipping me one by one. Otherwise, they would be whipped themselves. My friend, she saw so danger, but she went running to call my mother from the field. My mother came and tried to save me. But the guard pushed her away and said, you touch that girl and you are an enemy of the people. My mother hid and watched until the night fell and everyone left. Then she came and took me in her arms and she said, don't worry, my child, you will heal. Heal how? Only with the few herbs we can find in the forest. After the genocide was over, we were so poor. We had nothing. I would wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and take few vegetables and sell them in the marketplace to help my mother to raise us children. Then I would quickly get dressed and go running to school, and I would study very hard, so hard I got a scholarship to go to university. My mother said, you will become a doctor to help small children like you were when you were beaten. I said, no, Mama. I will become a judge to transform the law of the jungle into the law of justice. My mother said, you are right, my child. We need justice even more than we need medicine. I became a judge. I worked so hard that Ministry of Justice hired me. I worked so hard that I was promoted until I became the Deputy Minister of Justice. Now, as Deputy Minister of Justice, every bill, every law I read carefully. And I ask myself, will this help the poorest of the poor in our country? Will this help the women and the children, the sick, those who have no access to anything at all? Will this help them? Yes,
I am fulfilling the promise I made to my own heart and to my dear mother. I am restoring the rule of law for the rule of the jungle. Thank you. Dear friends, take Sotevi Chan's story deep into your hearts and think, how can you apply this in your own life? Every single one of you, every single one of us has in some way been a victim of life, just as we may sometimes inadvertently be perpetrators. Let us look deep into our own hearts and see, how can we heal those wounds of victimization by finding the gift of wisdom that lies within them? How can we find the destiny, the fate that is waiting to be uncovered, the purpose that awaits us within our victimization, so we can become leaders, transforming that injustice that we faced for the benefit of all others, so that others may not be victimized as we were? So think of this question for yourselves and write a bit in the chat of your inner reflection. How was I victimized? What was the gift of victimization that I can use to help others to not be victimized? And second question, take it deep within and ask yourselves, in terms of being a non-violent leader in my society, how can I make sure that every act that I do is based on the needs of the neediest in my society? Remember our beloved Gandhi, when he asked us to think of that child, the most needy, and make every action based on that child. So let us see, how can I, as a non-violent leader, base every action to eliminate, not reduce, eliminate socioeconomic inequality? If I'm involved in lawmaking, in legislation, how can I ensure, like Sotevi, that every law is there for the poorest of the poor, for those with no access to resources and justice? Let us think, absorb, share your feedback on the chat so we can learn together and we move on in our journey around the world, going now from political, socioeconomic and legal in Cambodia, moving to cultural justice, for which we go to South America, to Peru. And I must say, everyone whose story I share in Theatre of Transformation, in Transformative Justice, they're all people I've had the privilege to meet, to learn from, to work with in different situations in my work on justice.
We are Sandra and Devra. We are the co-founders of the Yachkani Theater in Peru. You see, 30 years ago, this dirty war of the dictators was destroying our country. Not just destroying our people with their bombs and their dirty campaigns, but destroying our nature, destroying our culture, destroying our past and our future. And we said, no, You see, Yuyachkani is a Quechua word from our indigenous Quechua language. It means, I am remembering. I am imagining. I am creating. I am thinking of the future. So with Yuyachkani theater, we are engaged in all of the arts and all of the theater and music of our country, working with our people. We work with the indigenous people of our country whose culture has been destroyed by this dirty war, which continues even the bombs have stopped. We help them to revive their traditions, their beautiful values and customs which our country needs to move forward, because we must learn from our ancient past. We are working with the women of our country who were deprived of everything and victimized when their children, their husbands were stolen from them and thrown into the ocean or tortured and killed. We help them to find their inner strength to become leaders for our society. We are working with the youth, because the youth are our future, but they have been misled. They have been given no future except to go on the streets or to go to crime or to depression. No. We, through music, arts, theater, all forms of creativity, we are helping them to find their future so they can become our future. You see, estamos creando una utopía para todos. We are creating a utopia, and our utopia for everyone. Gracias. Muchas gracias. So, dear friends, take Yuyachkani, the power of remembering, imagining, creating the past, the present, the future, deep into you. And think, all of us know, it's in our moments of crisis that our creativity bursts out. What is your access point to your unique and particular gift of creativity? When you are in a moment of crisis, how do you come out of the confines and create new possibilities through your innate creativity? And how can you nurture that to become the strongest non-violent leader you could be? So even in the deepest crisis, under any pressure, you can access your unique creativity and find new possibilities for the future. As all of the leaders we will meet today, and many others of those that you work with, always do in crisis. So take a moment to reflect on your gift of creativity and share it on the screen, on the chat screen. And then think about your society, the context in which you work. What is the form of cultural oppression, discrimination, systemic injustice, the complete destruction of cultures, like what is happening to the many, many, many unique Adivasi cultures in India, in Latin America, where they are being destroyed by our current socioeconomic system of capitalism? Which one touches your heart? What can you do in every action as a non-violent leader to restore, to honor, to treasure, and above all, to learn the wisdom of these ancient cultures, so we can create a culture of conscience, of compassion, of inclusion for all? So take these two questions, personal, societal, deep into you. Remember, tonight you can go back and think more deeply about them. So now write down a few words, and let's say goodbye to Peru and the Yuyachkani, and travel where the bombs are still falling, to Syria. My name is Gardenia. That is the name that I adopted when our peaceful revolution for justice and democracy began. You know, when our revolution started, we would carry olive branches in our hand. And when the soldiers pointed their guns at us, we would give them an olive branch and say, all we want is peace and human rights and justice, just like everyone else in the world. Don't you want the same? Then they started bombing us from above. I remember that day of the first bombing. I had just graduated and I was walking to work. I heard the shouting, on your knees, down, down on the ground. I fell to the ground. But I looked like in a horror movie, like in slow motion, bomb after bomb, barrel bombs, meant to destroy as many people and houses as possible, falling and falling and falling and falling. Then when all was quiet, I went running to my house. Our neighborhood was one of the first to be destroyed. There was nothing left, not even a memory. But we Syrians, old and young, whatever our background, we didn't just sit quietly and wait for the international community to save us. We began to organize ourselves. Every day, new civil society organizations would emerge like our flowers and our olive trees would in the past. We all worked together. I joined the first field hospital. I joined the White Helmets. All was started by our friends, our neighbors, because we all believed that when you lose one human life, you lose all humanity. You see, we are all working together now, praying for peace and in between the bombs, rebuilding what we have, because we know we are all interconnected. We are all interconnected. I will just share with you now one of the many, many civil society organizations that I created with 6 of my friends. We felt since the war started, we never heard children anymore laughing and playing. Normally, every year, we would plant our olive trees together. We would collect sage together. We would make little gardens in our homes. And now, that was impossible. So with my friends, we said, what if we brought together some children just one afternoon, just to play and to plant some seeds, even if they never see them grow, let them have the touch of the earth in their hands. We did that. And that afternoon, hearing the children laugh and play, seeing the joy as their hands touched the earth and they planted seeds, we said, this cannot be just once. That's how Olive Tree was born. And now there are Olive Tree civil society organizations all over, wherever we can, in Syria and in all the refugee camps. And children are coming together to play and to plant and to learn to live again with nature, even during the war. And when it is over, we will go back and we will plant our trees and we will rebuild a Syria of inclusion and love and peace for everyone. We will. Assalamu alaikum. Yes. Take Gardenia, my young student today in my Masters of Transformative Justice class, Kinda, my adopted son, Noor. So many Syrians around the world scattered now. So many Syrians still caught in this madness of destruction in Syria. Take them deep into your heart. And let's for just one moment pray for justice and peace to come to Syria and to every country still entangled in the meshes of war. And now, dear
nonviolent leaders. Take this into your heart and go back to your own childhood. Remember the time you climbed trees and talked to birds and you were sure they talked back to you. Remember the first time you got your hands dirty in the mud, in the earth, in the sand. Maybe all of you have planted a seed yourselves in the past. Go back there and remember that feeling we had as children when we were a part of nature. We knew ourselves to be part of the earth, and just reconnect to that. Because the most important thing for transformative leaders, for nonviolent leaders of the future, is if you can feel yourselves as part of nature. Not just restore the environment, but feel your oneness with nature. Then you will be able to ensure that you create a society that honors and protects nature and reverses the irreversible damage we have done to the earth. So first take it in, connect to that feeling of your childhood when you were one with nature. Connect to your commitment as a non-violent leader to bring that oneness with nature into everything you do. And write a couple of words of what your connection to nature is and how that can be part of your leadership. And now think of society and think of how you could bring this into your work in society. We have just 2 more stops. I think we're coming to the close of the session. Is it, Ria? Is that why you're... Okay, should I jump over one story and go to the last one?
Yes, we have like 4 minutes or so.
Okay.
5 minutes.
So,
Yes.
I'm sorry that I miscalculated time.
No problem.
I will be mindful of time. Don't worry, Ria. You can. So I'm just going to skip over, most unfortunately, epistemic justice with the story of the young boy refugee from Somalia to come to spiritual justice, which is the whole purpose of JAGAT. And so let us take it there. And it's a very short story. I am Rauda from Bethlehem. I was born in 1967, the year that my people lost their freedom. But the fire of freedom was born with me in my mother's milk. So when I was 16, I became a militant and I made my first Molotov cocktail. But that got me caught and put in prison for 8 years. I was released the same day as Muhammad. He had been in prison 15 years. His body was ravaged with torture, but his soul was still alive with the same flame of freedom that burnt in mine. So we ignored his Muslim parents and my Christian parents, and we married, and we ran from hideout to hideout with our materials and our clandestine posters to be militants for freedom in our country. Until the second Intifada, when I looked around and saw the shards of all the broken lives stretched around me like an ocean, unending. And I asked myself, and we asked each other, who will help these broken men and women, these children? Who will help them to piece together their lives and to go from suffering to strength? We knew we must, and we would. So that day we put away our clandestine posters and we transformed our home into this center for women victimized by war. They come here with their grief and I hold them, just hold them in these circles of deep dialogue until they find their inner strength, so they can stand tall as community leaders and support others and others and others to be the future, to be the justice, to be the peace for our society. Yes, my friends, transformation begins within, with us. And if each one of us can be that change, can take ourselves on that journey of inner transformation, imagine the light that you are and will continue to be for society. I'm very sorry that we don't have the time to take this into a conversation, but I'm so grateful that so many of you have shared your chats. I will read the chats, we will share them with each other, and may this conversation continue. Thank you so much. And again, I regret that I'm a little bit over time.
No problem. Thank you so much, Ramamani ji, for this
I
very.
realized I started late because I'd miscalculated the time with the time zone difference.
We actually have 5 more minutes. So if you want to
wonderful.
do something,
For me, the most
3 minutes, you can definitely do.
Yeah, there are so many beloved friends. I see Ila Gandhichi, you had addressed my master's class in Transformative Justice some years ago, and we have never forgotten that. So many wonderful colleagues and friends from around the world. I would be thrilled if there is a way. I'll read all your comments and learn so much from all of you. But if there's a way to receive some feedback, some questions, if you want to, dear Ria, share something that struck you from the chats. I would love to ask everyone in the last minutes if you could just share on the chat screen so we get something from everyone. How does this resonate, this approach to transformative justice resonate with you as the transformative nonviolent leaders you already are? And for the young people who've joined our call, how does it call you forward to become such leaders, such as those you've experienced today and the few whose stories I presented? And it would be great if you put that in the chat, and maybe, Ria, you could either give the floor to one or two or use your self-share. So just if everyone could put in, where does this echo with your life, your practice? What is your, what can you teach us, and what have you learned?
Ramamani ji, since about 15-20 minutes back onwards, we have been receiving comments in the chat box constantly, and all of them are sharing how important this inner transformational process is so important for leadership and nonviolent leadership building. So I can just read out something that just come up now, probably that would be very helpful for you. From Father Sakriya, Sakriya Kalur of People's Movement for Peace. He says, it was sad that you missed about the knowledge justice. Thank you so much. It was really an eye-opener to different aspects of justice. Then there's pain from Nicholas. We have a point saying that pains and sadness can be strength for justice and peace for future. Would you like to say something for that?
You've got it completely. Our pains of sorrow and weakness become the tears. Our tears of sorrow and weakness become the tears of strength. And when we cry for others, we are actually supporting them in finding their own strength. If we had 5 minutes, I would so happily share the story of Abdi, a young 13-year-old when he became a refugee, but I don't want to impose on you. What I would just share is, as a young boy, having to flee his home, thanks to our beloved, my adopted daughter, filmmaker from Turkey, Elif Tibet, who kind of adopted him, made him her co-researcher of her PhD, he has emerged as a photojournalist. She supported his education because he had promised his assassinated father that he would pursue education, and he's using education as a pathway for justice. And since all of this is really about transformative education, living and learning, I'll just share that piece, but thanks for asking about that. I'm just so honored that I could do this. Thank you, Elaji. I see your beautiful message. I'm very touched by all the feedback, and may we continue to march together for this world of peace.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So for everyone, you can of course Google Ramamani ji and the transformative processes that she does. You can Google it up, and I think she's just typing in the details as well.
I'm just typing in my two websites. There's Theatre of Transformation.org. And also you can send us messages. We have two wonderful young people who are online who very love to hear your messages because they do our social media. It's Theatre of Transformation. Theatre of Transformation Academy on Facebook. Voila. And I think that maybe if Kamu's online, she'll share the Instagram later on because I don't know it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I would like to conclude with one of the comments given by Wow Peace. They say the arts echo in the heart, and it is the stories from the heart that build bridges from one to another. Thank you so much.
May you have a beautiful rest of the day, and may the movement continue.